Welcome back to Real Crime Stories, the podcast where we bring you crime stories from around the world. On a deserted stretch of road, the night was shattered by the roar of engines. Two motorcycles tore through the darkness, one fleeing in desperation, the other relentlessly closing in. Headlights sliced across open fields, shadows stretched over the asphalt, and the air pulsed with a sense of inevitability. Within minutes, the chase would end in catastrophe. A young life would be lost, and a family secret would be violently exposed. What happened that night was no accident. It was the beginning of a tragedy that would shock Italy and ignite a painful national debate. Maria Paola Gaglione was born in July 2002 in Caivano, a small Italian town known for high crime rates and deeply rooted traditions. She was the youngest child of Franco Gaglione and Pina Amico. Her only sibling, Michele Antonio Gaglione, was 12 years older and fiercely protective, so much so that he often treated Maria Paola less like a sister and more like someone he believed he had authority over. The Gaglione household was governed by rigid traditional values. Men were expected to lead, women to obey. Daughters were taught submission, while sons were burdened with defending the family's honor, even if it meant controlling their sisters' lives. For years, Maria Paola seemed destined to follow that path. But everything changed during her teenage years. At 15, she met Ciro Migliore, a young man 4 years older. What began as a friendship slowly grew into love. Ciro was different from other boys in the neighborhood. He had been born female, but as a teenager he began his transition to live as the man he had always known himself to be. For Maria, this was never an obstacle. She loved Ciro deeply and supported him completely, choosing to stand beside him through a journey marked with courage, struggle, and resistance. While the couple found strength in each other, the world around them showed little compassion. To Maria Paola's family, her relationship with Ciro was not just unconventional, it was a disgrace. Their disapproval became suffocating. Under constant pressure, Maria Paola and Ciro made the painful decision to hide their relationship. For nearly 3 years, they loved each other in secrecy, clinging to dreams of a future where they wouldn't have to live in fear. When Maria turned 18, she finally found the courage to defy her family. She abandoned the life her parents had planned for her and made a choice that would change everything. She ran away with Ciro. The couple took refuge in the home of one of Ciro's relatives, just 6 miles from Caivano. It wasn't far, but it felt like freedom. They had no money, no stable jobs, and no home of their own. Yet for 23 days they lived together believing love would be enough. Then came the night of September 11th into the early hours of September 12th, 2020. Around 1:30 a.m., emergency services received a call reporting a road accident. At the scene, 2 motorcycles told a chilling story. One, a larger, more powerful bike, stood upright on its kickstand. The other, a small scooter, lay overturned in tall roadside grass, partially hidden by vegetation. Just meters away, Maria Paola lay motionless. She was only 18 years old. Thrown from the scooter, she had struck an irrigation pipe, the impact fatally cutting her throat. Ciro had been driving the scooter. Despite his injuries, he managed to get up and run to a nearby apartment complex, frantically ringing doorbells and begging for help. Residents rushed to his aid and called emergency services. He was soon taken to a medical center for treatment. At first, everything pointed to a tragic accident. Early reports suggested Maria Paola had lost control of the scooter, possibly forced off the road by another vehicle that fled the scene. To the outside world, it seemed like a cruel twist of fate, but investigators soon uncovered a far darker truth. This was not an accident. It was not chance. It was the end of a pursuit. And the person chasing Maria and Ciro that night was not a stranger. It was her own brother, Michele. What followed would reveal a reality far more disturbing than anyone could have imagined. On that September night, as Maria and Ciro headed back to their relative's home, Michele was already waiting. He knew the route they would take, and he was determined to stop them. Mounting his powerful motorcycle, he fell in behind their scooter, tailing them closely before swerving aggressively into their path. Again and again he cut them off, trying to force them to stop. At times he rode alongside them, lashing out with his foot and kicking at the scooter as it sped along the poorly lit road. Seated behind Ciro, Maria pleaded with her brother, begging him to stop, urging him to understand that his reckless behavior was putting their lives at risk. Her words had no effect. Consumed by rage and convinced he was defending the family's honor, Michele continued the pursuit. For nearly 16 agonizing minutes, the chase stretched on through the darkness. Then, on a sharp curve in the road, Michele struck one final blow, kicking the scooter violently from the left side. In an instant, Ciro lost control. The scooter veered off the road and crashed into the brush. Ciro was thrown to the ground, fracturing his arm, but he managed to get back on his feet. Maria Paola was not as fortunate. She was hurled from the scooter, her body slamming into a concrete irrigation pipe, the impact severing her throat. She was 18 years old. She died there on the roadside. In the moments that followed, chaos erupted. As Ciro struggled to recover, Michele caught up to him and launched a brutal assault, raining punches and kicks fueled by fury. Just meters away, Maria lay motionless. It was only when Michele realized his sister was no longer moving that the attack stopped. In shock, he called his parents, then emergency services. Fearing for his life, Ciro ran toward a nearby apartment building, desperately ringing the intercom and begging for help. Strangers opened their doors and immediately contacted authorities. Ciro was rushed to a clinic, his arm broken, his life spared. The truth soon emerged. Michele, a 30-year-old man, married and a father, was arrested. His first statements to the police were chilling. He admitted he had done something stupid. He claimed he never intended to kill his sister, only to punish her, to teach her a lesson for loving a transgender man. He described Maria as normal and blamed Ciro for corrupting her, for leading her astray. Yet he denied causing the crash itself, insisting he was farther behind when it happened. That claim quickly unraveled. Forensic investigators found bruises on Ciro's body that matched the tread pattern of Michele's motorcycle boots, clear evidence that Ciro had been assaulted after the crash, confirming his testimony. Witnesses soon came forward. Neighbors and acquaintances revealed that threats and violence were no new thing. Michele had repeatedly tried to force the couple apart. The first documented incident dated back to July 13th of that same year, when he went to Ciro's home and threatened him directly, warning that if he didn't stay away from Maria, he would kill him. Terrified, Ciro never reported the threat, but he never forgot it. Investigators dug deeper. Reports suggested some members of the Gaglione family had ties to local criminal networks, casting an even darker shadow over the case. Initially, Michele was placed in pre-trial detention on charges of personal injury and causing death during another crime. As evidence mounted, the charges escalated to manslaughter and aggravated private violence, with homophobia listed as an aggravating factor. The presiding judge confirmed not only the homicide charge, but also the assault on Ciro, an act Michele himself ultimately admitted to. From his hospital bed, still confined to a wheelchair with his arm fractured, Ciro later spoke to the press. His words were both devastating and defiant. Despite the unbearable loss of Maria, he said that in some way they had already won, because they had lived their love freely, even if only for a short time. He described trying again and again to explain their relationship to their family, only to be rejected. To them, he said, Ciro and Maria were seen as two women, and their love was forbidden. He recalled overhearing relatives say they would rather see their daughter dead than in love with someone like him. For Ciro, there was no doubt that Michele had been the fiercest opponent of their relationship, the one who refused to understand, the one who could not accept. Meanwhile, Maria Paola's parents chose silence, avoiding direct contact with the media, and communicating instead through their parish priest and legal counsel. From the very beginning, Maria's parents clung to the version that her death had been nothing more than a tragic accident. In their view, their son had not intended to harm her. He had simply been trying to bring his sister home. In an open letter, they explained their decision to remain silent, describing it as a way to mourn their daughter with dignity and love. The Gaglione family insisted their opposition had never been about Maria's sexual orientation. According to them, their concern centered on the person she was with. They portrayed Ciro as a negative influence, a young man they claimed was unreliable, without stable work, and involved in trouble. Yet even as they defended their son, they conceded that only time would reveal whether their fears had been justified. Ciro's mother, Rosa, took a very different stance. Speaking publicly, she expressed unfiltered grief and anger. To her, there was no ambiguity. Michele had acted with full awareness, driven by his inability to accept that his sister loved a transgender man. Rosa accused the Gaglione family of setting a cruel trap for the young couple, pretending to seek reconciliation while luring them back into danger. In her anguish, she went further, accusing Maria's mother of being the true instigator, claiming she had threatened the young couple and repeatedly denied Ciro's identity by referring to him with female terms. On September 15, 2020, just days after the crash, the town of Caivano gathered to say farewell to Maria Paola. The funeral was marked by applause, white balloons rising into the sky, and doves released in her memory. Through their lawyer, the Gaglione family invited the LGBTQ+ community to attend the service. Yet, despite this public gesture, they refused to allow Ciro, her partner, the person she had chosen, to say goodbye. That same day, still hospitalized, Ciro turned to social media. In a message filled with grief and love, he noted that the date also marked what would have been his 3rd anniversary with Maria Paola. His words carried both profound sorrow and quiet pride. Pride in a love that, in his eyes, had prevailed against prejudice, even if only briefly. The story of Maria Paola and Ciro resonated far beyond their families. Across Italy and beyond, many began to describe it as a modern-day Romeo and Juliet. Thousands who had never known the couple mourned openly, moved by a love that had fought to exist and was violently cut short. On social media, Maria Paola's image became a symbol. Candles were lit, flowers placed at the crash site, and rainbow flags raised in her name. The message was clear. Love should never cost a life. Grief, however, was inseparable from anger. Many rejected the family's attempt to minimize what had happened, refusing to accept the narrative of a simple accident or domestic dispute gone wrong. To them, the truth was undeniable. This was an act driven by hatred, intolerance, and a violent refusal to accept difference. The case quickly evolved from a local tragedy into a national debate. Public pressure mounted on the Italian parliament to move forward with long-stalled legislation, including the Zan law, aimed at combating hate crimes and protecting the rights of transgender and homosexual individuals. As public outrage grew, the judicial process continued. On the very day Maria Paola was laid to rest, her brother, Michele, appeared before an investigating judge for a lengthy interrogation. Once again, he claimed he never intended to harm his sister, insisting that he only wanted what he believed was a better life for her. But his words rang hollow against the weight of the evidence. The judge identified 3 decisive elements. First, Michele admitted that on the night of the tragedy, he had deliberately set out to follow his sister. Second, he confessed to attempting to stop the scooter by kicking it from the side, an act corroborated by witness statements and security camera footage showing the two motorcycles racing dangerously close together. Third, after the crash, he violently attacked Ciro with punches and kicks, a clear indication, the judge concluded, of uncontrollable rage. These facts could not be dismissed as an accident. The fall of the scooter was not the result of chance, but the direct consequence of Michele's reckless pursuit and violent actions. His behavior, the judge stated, demonstrated not only aggression, but a serious risk to society. With those findings, Michele's detention was upheld, and the charges against him were formally escalated. Michele now stood accused of manslaughter, aggravated by motives the court described as futile and rooted in homophobia. What had first been presented as a tragic accident on a quiet September night was now recognized as something far more sinister. A story of prejudice, control, and rage that left a young woman dead, a young man shattered, and an entire community demanding justice. On September 17th, just days after the crash, Michele broke his silence from behind bars. From his prison cell, he wrote a letter that quickly spread across Italian media. In it, he described the loss of his younger sister as a wound that had torn his heart apart. He claimed he had always seen Maria Paola almost as a daughter, especially in the absence of her father during her upbringing. He insisted he never intended for any of it to happen, and wrote that he would never forgive himself for that night. Yet within the same letter, his narrative shifted once again. He cast Ciro in a darker light, portraying him as someone surrounded by dangerous people and involved in questionable circles, an argument that would later resurface in court. In February 2021, public perception of Ciro changed abruptly. In a large-scale anti-drug operation across several Italian regions, he was arrested along with 23 others. Authorities accused him of acting as a small-scale dealer within a broader trafficking network. The charges extended beyond narcotics, including weapons-related offenses, theft, arson, and assisting in the escape of a detainee under house arrest. Despite living openly as a man, Ciro was placed in a women's prison. Legally, the charges related to events that dated back to 2018, before he had officially begun his transgender transition. The decision reignited national debate in an already divided country. His defense argued that these offenses predated both his transition and his relationship with Maria Paola, a relationship they said had given his life a new sense of direction. Meanwhile, proceedings against Michele continued. In April 2022, the court granted him house arrest with an electronic bracelet, citing good behavior in custody, the absence of prior convictions, and the belief that he posed a low risk of reoffending. At 32 years old, it appeared he might receive leniency, but that hope proved short-lived. On May 5th, the trial began. Prosecutors sought a 22-year sentence, arguing that Michele's actions were deliberate and amounted to the killing of Maria Paola and the attempted killing of Ciro. The defense maintained that he never intended to cause harm, insisting that he only wanted what he believed was a better life for her. But at first, prosecutors considered adding homophobia as an aggravating factor. As the trial unfolded, however, that charge was dropped. Ciro's subsequent imprisonment for drug-related offenses appeared to strengthen the family's claim that their opposition to the relationship had been based on concerns about his lifestyle rather than prejudice against his gender identity. In the end, the judges weighed Michele's lack of a criminal record and his conduct in detention as mitigating factors. They ruled out voluntary homicide and convicted him of manslaughter and aggravated assault. The final sentence, 9 years and 6 months in prison. The verdict divided public opinion. For Ciro and those who had supported the couple, the punishment felt like a betrayal, an erosion of the truth behind Maria's death. Outside the courthouse, Ciro's lawyer told reporters that the real tragedy was not only the loss of a young woman, but the destruction of a love that had managed to survive poverty, rejection, and social stigma. In his words, love itself had been the greatest victim. Michele's defense team appealed the ruling, but in June 2024, the appeal was rejected. The sentence was upheld, bringing legal certainty, if not emotional closure. The trial did not heal the wounds. Instead, it reignited debates across Italy, exposing the deep fractures that still run through society: prejudice, intolerance, and the devastating consequences of replacing dialogue with violence. Beyond court rulings, headlines, and competing narratives, one truth remains unchallenged. A young woman lost her life, and with her, a love story that fought against everything, but could not survive the brutality of hatred. Thank you for watching Real Crime Stories. Share your thoughts on the story, like and subscribe to the channel. Until the next episode when we bring you more crime stories, stay safe.